Matome Kapa, who's the program head at the Center for Environmental Rights. Thank you so much, Matome, for your time and for joining us this afternoon. So we heard there from Tate Baombele, who is a landowner, saying they have not given any consent with regards to this company that has now dug over 20 holes on their property. In your experience, to what extent are exploration activities aligned with the principles of sustainable development and environmental justice in our country? And are you seeing a role that is being played by government in ensuring that communities are protected?
Yeah, thank you for having us. As you said, my name is Matome Kapa. I work at the Center for Environmental Rights. We are a non-profit organization. We're activist lawyers. We work with mining-affected communities facing issues similar to what Udadewabo was speaking about. And what the law says in terms of these prospecting operations, before a mine comes in, before a mine is able to get a prospecting right, they need to go through a process of EIAs. So these are different studies that are done. And part of that process of EIA, it requires consultation. And this consultation itself is a legal duty, so it's not something that is optional. And in terms of this consultation, the law requires that consultation must be meaningful. In it being meaningful, it means it must be inclusive, it must be accessible. So that means communities must receive the relevant information in relevant language. The consultations must happen in accessible venues. And what the comrade Dadoetu is indicating in relation to the story that she tells is that, they received a letter, and a letter itself is not consultation. What is consultation is dialogue. So in terms of what government needs to do to ensure that proper consultations are happening is to facilitate this process of public participation. And part of that is that when government is granting this prospecting rights or these permissions for mining companies to go and explore in communities, they should have due consideration of what happened in the consultation. And what we usually see in many different communities, because the story that Udadewatu is telling is a story that is similar in Limpopo. If you go to Limpopo, you'll have communities telling the same story. You go to the Northwest, you have communities telling the same story. You go to Mpumalanga, you have communities. So across the country, communities are telling the same story, that mining companies here, come here, we don't know what they're doing, and they're digging into our land, and we have not been properly consulted. And if people have not been properly consulted, that means those prospecting rights, those permissions that they received from government, they cannot stand. And so in terms of what government, yes.
Yes, continue.
No, I'll say, and then in terms of what government then needs to do is that it needs to take the concerns of communities into consideration. When communities say that we have not been consulted, that means proper procedures have not been followed. That means the permission that they have themselves are not valid, so they cannot proceed with the work.
Then what recourse would Datebao and her family then have in an instance where you're saying that EIA consultation process did not take place, and you were saying that it's a legal duty and it's not optional? What recourse would they then have in an instance such as this?
So there are various pieces of legislation that apply, and in particular, as it applies to prospecting rights, there's the National Environmental Management Act, and what that act does, it provides for an appeals process. So where permissions have been granted, but communities are feeling that those permissions were not granted in accordance with proper processes, communities are able to mobilize and then get legal advice. And then in terms of that legal advice, what they can do is they can be able to apply for an appeal for that particular prospecting right to be appealed. And when that prospecting right is appealed and it is found that proper processes were not followed, that means that prospecting right can be cancelled and then operations cannot continue. So what Udadewatu and the family and the community can be able to do in this particular instance is to be able to find out, the records, access information around the records of the consultations that were supposed to have taken place before the prospecting right was granted. And that will be their leverage in terms of trying to initiate an appeal against this particular prospecting right.
In instances where you often see mining companies just coming into these communities, do you find that they address the community concerns specifically related to land use, water resources, and just the local livelihoods during these explorations?
Yeah, and as I was saying, the situation that Utatwetu describes is very similar across many communities in South Africa. Communities always complain that when the mining company comes here, a lot of things that happen is that there will be information gaps, so people don't know what's going on. If there are consultations, sometimes those consultations are done with certain elite people in the community, say, for example, businessmen or traditional leaders, to the exclusion of ordinary citizens in the community. And you also find that some of these consultations, the timing in the way that the consultations are done, they don't receive sufficient notice. They don't have enough time to be able to consider information that they would receive. They don't receive the appropriate reports that tells them how and where the prospecting is going to take place for them to be able to make informed decisions about this particular mining right or this particular operations. So we find, and another big factor around this is also there's a power imbalance between communities and mining companies. Mining companies come into the communities with lawyers, with consultants, and then you find rural communities with limited resources have to now contend against these companies. And there isn't a role that government plays to balance these scales.
Well, we certainly do hope with the minister being in that particular environment right now, there is a role that they will certainly play in ensuring that these communities are protected. Thank you for your time. That's Matome Kapa, the program head at the Center for Environmental Rights.